Today on MS Refresh, we tackle Microsoft's big Future of AI at Work event. And unsurprisingly, the star of the show was artificial intelligence, AI, everywhere. And maybe, just maybe, we reconnect to the soul of our work. All that and more. Subscribe to stay in the know. This is the MS Refresh Show. Hi there, and welcome to the Matt and Sean 365 Refresh Show. This is episode 82, covering the recent announcement of Microsoft's AI features coming to Microsoft 365. Coming to you from the West Coast, I'm Sean Bugler.
And from the East Coast, my name is Matt Wade.
Matt Wade, did you see the event?
Oh, I definitely did. Did you?
I did. I had the privilege of it happening before my workday starting. So I woke up, I poured myself a cup of coffee, and I started my day with my best friend, Jared Spataro.
How did that go for you?
I gotta tell you, it was uplifting.
Yeah?
That man
so too.
has a smile that I don't think ever goes away. Like, I wouldn't want to see him angry.
I agree, because it would be scary.
There's a ton to talk about here, and I'm really excited. For those of you who don't normally watch this show, last episode, Matt and I talked about all the things that we thought might be coming in this particular event. And I gotta say, Matt, I think we were pretty bang on in terms of the things that we hoped we would see. What did you think?
I think that's a fair assessment. I think some of the things that were announced today are similar to what we're talking about, especially in my case, but not even closely branded the same way or umbrellaed under the same other services. So I was kind of surprised to see certain tool sets and services being affected by the new AI tools, and then others have no mention whatsoever.
Yeah, so it was interesting to kind of see the branding exercise in the midst of this here. But we want to go ahead and start with one of the biggest questions that I know a lot of you have, which is, when are we going to see this stuff? And the answer is, nobody knows.
In the coming months.
Yeah, in the coming months, which, if historical precedent has any bearing on where Microsoft is going to go with this, a lot of what we're seeing isn't ready for prime time. According to the blog post, which we're going to drop all the blog posts that we were able to find that weren't just repeating what the others were saying in the show notes below, and we covered a lot of them. Mm-hmm. But one of the things they emphasize is that pretty much everything we're going to be talking about here is in the hands of just 20 customers right now. So 8 of which are Fortune 500 customers, the rest of which I assume are mom and pop bistros, coffee shops, and one Contoso.
I was going to say definitely a CBD shop.
Oh, at least one, right? So Matt, before we get into like the full nitty gritty of it, what was your takeaway with the fact that this event happened out of the cadence of a typical Microsoft cycle? Typically, we've got Ignite setting the roadmap for the next 12 months. We then have an event typically in May, usually kind of filled by the Microsoft 365 conference, which both of you you and I are speaking at, Bugler 100. We'll drop a link in the show notes if you want to register and see us in Vegas. And then we've got this March event, just kind of out there, outside the cycle. What did you make of that?
So it was clearly an example of competition in the marketplace and speed of return on rolling out a product or an idea, because Google's was just a couple days ago for Google Workspace, and Microsoft also had to jump quickly on top of the public interest, I guess, but almost fascination with ChatGPT and the OpenAI services. So if they didn't do it soon, they were going to be really missing the ball.
Sure, that makes perfect sense, and I think it's a great call out that Google just had their event this past Tuesday, a really popular announcement day for big tech companies, where they announced all these great AI enhancements for Google Workspace, whether it was the summarizing of emails in Gmail or the generation of text inside the Google Docs, Google Sheets side of things. It's interesting to see Microsoft responding so quickly to the stuff that Google is happening. Obviously, this event was announced weeks before Google put their stuff out there, but we're seeing some competition, which is not always the case. We don't see it happen this quickly. So it's such a unique time in tech.
It's nice to see the technology that we're seeing with Bing AI, which right now is only available to people with MSAs, which are free accounts with Microsoft. Maybe they include the paid consumer accounts, but a lot of us pay a lot of money for E3, E5 enterprise licensing from Microsoft, and none of this exists in where they're getting a good portion of their cash coming in, right? So I'm really glad to see that happen as soon as it is, because the fact that the Bing AI service, like I can't even use my Microsoft 365 account to log in to try Bing AI or get on the wait list because it doesn't even accept a work or school account at this point. So it's nice to see that this stuff is not only being available or is going to be available soon, but the level of integration that they brought it into almost every service that they have within the M365 stack. So I don't know about you, Sean, but we've talked a good amount about OpenAI and a lot of the AI features and whatnot the last number of weeks. You just can't ignore it, right? It just is ingrained in the stuff that we're doing, even if it's not part of the everyday for people yet. But I really, truly think that this is one of those steps forward in technology that is going to be the iPhone in 2007, the internet in the 90s, and there is no going back, and it's going to change everything. It's going to put some people out of work. It's going to put some people into work. It's going to transition a lot of what people do, and it's really interesting to watch this, live as it happens, because I think this happens a lot faster than a lot of the other things in the past. And I think this is the game changer of the 2020s, and not the coveted metaverse that everybody has spent too many billions of dollars on in the last few years.
Couldn't agree more. To that end, there are 2 points that I want to make on what you said. The first, you're 100% right. It does require a personal Microsoft account in order to access Bing AI. Microsoft did announce that they are trialing eliminating the waitlist. So right now, as we're recording this, you can sign up for Bing AI and start using it same day, which is exciting. I mean, this is a really powerful technology that's now just in people's hands. They've also increased the number of chats they are allowed to use per day for those people who have been using it, like you and I. So we're talking about free access, increased access, and on Tuesday, same day that Google announced all their stuff, OpenAI announced the launch of their latest model, GPT-4, which they simultaneously revealed is the engine that is powering Bing AI.
Which was no surprise, but
well, there was some conversation as to whether this was just like a polished up version of GPT 3.5,
okay,
with a little bit of extra AI sprinkled on top. But it was good to hear it said out loud.
I'm picturing pixie dust being.
Just. But yeah, so for those people who haven't had the opportunity to explore what natural language search and chat with these AI models is like, the best way to understand it is to do it, because for everybody the aha moment is a little bit different. But yeah, go check it out. So bing.com/new, and you can go check it out right now, at least as we're recording this.
Yep.
So
there's a whole bunch of stuff to cover. I was just going to say, why don't we just dive into the feature sets that were announced today? Give a little bit of an overview for all the various services within M365 and Power Platform. We'll touch a little bit on, but we're going to cover that separately in a later episode because it had its own. Let's jump into it.
Let's get into it. So the biggest announcement, and the one that carried the day with respect to everything that Microsoft had to talk about, was this concept of an AI Copilot. Now, for those people who have followed Microsoft long enough, you know that this isn't the first time they've used this kind of language. GitHub, which is another Microsoft-owned service, has had their own version of Copilot for a little over a year now. And that has been this specially designed model of AI that allows people to leverage it to enhance and kind of supercharge their own coding. So you can say like what kind of code you're trying to build, and it'll spit something out based on what it's learned over the millions and millions of projects that exist within GitHub. Of course, there's some controversy around that. But all that to say, this concept of a Copilot is not a new one for Microsoft, but to see them bring it into the Microsoft 365 universe was exciting. So Microsoft introduced the concept of a Copilot on a number of different services. And while we talked about this idea that that AI could supercharge services specifically like Outlook and PowerPoint, what I don't think either of us really anticipated was that they were going to bolt it into everything, or at least their main Microsoft 365 products. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Outlook, Teams, Loop, all of these got a name check during the 30-minute event, which we're also linking below for those of you who want to watch 30 minutes of Satya and Jared talk about all the cool stuff that's happening here. Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about what jumped out to you with Copilot?
So I was impressed with how ubiquitous it is. So every one of the major apps within M365 basically gets a Copilot pane on the right side of the UX, and it's meant to be a Copilot. The name I'm actually a fan of. I do like that because it's helping you move along, and you can ask it to go do things within a certain context that you're in. So if you're in, I think the example they gave, which I think is kind of ridiculous, but a PowerPoint presentation where you tell it that you want to make a 10-slide presentation based on the Word document that exists over here. Why you would want to tell it to make, a 10-slide and not a 5-slide or something shorter, but whatever. And going through how it can pull that information and basically take a Word document, make it a PowerPoint presentation, take a PowerPoint presentation and make it into a Word document. I think Excel, with that, the ability to ask it very the kind of stuff that Power BI has been advertising as reasonably new for the last couple of years, right? The natural language query concept can now be done in Excel directly. So I'm not saying that Power BI it doesn't have a use anymore because you can't get the beautiful displays and reports and whatnot within Excel, but it was even creating live a number of tables that summarized what it was telling the person as an answer. The fact that exists, the Copilot tool, helper, the Copilot also exists in the M365 hub. So the search bar essentially becomes a chat box, that it's available in Teams as a chat recipient. And you can also use it within Bing if you're logged in. So similar to how Microsoft Search is sort of integrated into Bing, was all, incredibly interesting, I thought, in that respect. The separate branding between the concept of the Copilot, which is in basically all of the apps, and then what's called Business Chat, which is the chatbot within Teams, the chatbot in M365 Home, and then the chat experience in Bing, which, when you're in Teams, it's literally called Copilot. So I don't know why they're calling it something separate, but so be it. That kind of ubiquity was really interesting to me. What was also interesting was that not once did anybody say Microsoft Search, because if you're using
Very interesting.
If you're using it in in Teams, why would you ever go to a search box ever again if you can just ask it a question and it's going to go out? And some of the demos, which I don't think anything was a live or real demo, I think they were all Figma or artificial, I guess, but showed that it would load live 10 files in front of you and then kind of zip them up and then reference them all throughout the answer. This is Microsoft Search, it could or should be potentially, right? Why would I ever use a search box again and go through Microsoft Search when I can just chat and get the answer in a natural language format?
It's a great question, and it speaks to a lot about where Microsoft is probably headed with this. But it was interesting to see the divergence in branding between what they're calling Business Chat, this idea of kind of a Bing AI, but for the internal enterprise, segmented away from what Microsoft Search has been. Yeah, not a single mention of Microsoft Search. So that was interesting. And, I have a hunch that it has to do with them positioning this for, a little bit of money. They want to make sure there's a clear segmentation away from existing products so it doesn't give the illusion or the perception that they are charging for something that was once free, which is undoubtedly going to be the case.
True.
And the same is true, and they mention as much in the announcement blog post for this overall event, that there is pricing details to come. They're going to charge money for this. It's a question of how much. GitHub Copilot, which I mentioned a moment ago, already has a pricing model. It's $10 a month, $100 a year for an individual license. So you do the math. If they found utility in it for $10 a month to help me code, it's not a hard leap to see Microsoft saying, well, surely that's worth as much. You know, it's worth one Cortana.
I was just going to say, clearly Cortana is higher value than GitHub Copilot. Like, no question about that. I'm actually kind of curious to see what happens with this Copilot, whether or not it's going to be able to do meeting scheduling automatically, because I feel like that should be one of those like baller moves that it's able to pull out of its pocket.
If it's not able to on day one, it's definitely something that's got to be on the horizon.
So.
And it probably stands to reason why they retired it. They can't have this
how can you compete?
Pseudo artificial intelligent assistant stacked up against this, you know, ubiquitous, omnipresent assistant that is, you know, taking the world by storm.
Yep.
So I want to drill in because we talked about kind of really two separate but marquee announcements under the same event. We talked about Business Chat, which was this ubiquitous chat that's going to exist in Teams on the Microsoft 365 hub, so office.com, and it's going to be available in Bing, which is also where the Microsoft Search entry point for enterprise has also typically been. Yeah. But there's also been this Copilot, which they're positioning as more of this action-based resource built directly into the products. So they gave a couple of examples. You mentioned Word, of course, you know, help me draft a 2-page memo about, you know, this important event that's coming. And they, from the get-go, were really intent on emphasizing that the goal is not for this to be a perfect output. They continued to emphasize that this isn't supplementing, this isn't replacing what we bring to the table, but it's augmenting, it's supercharging. And they, I believe, even use the word like coworker. Like a good coworker, I will correct mistakes. So they're already kind of trying to socialize this idea that it's going to make some stuff up, both because that's just what this AI technology has a propensity to do today, and because it's going to be pulling information from across M365. And spoiler alert, your colleagues make mistakes. Yes.
I have conversations with people all the time about how do you improve enterprise search results, and it comes down to you have to delete stuff that's not relevant anymore, and nobody does that. So search engine is going to be garbage in, garbage out, and you can trust generally the open internet with guidelines to source information, but intranets are not trustworthy unless you have a very strong governance policy for killing stuff that isn't right, or it's outdated, or shouldn't be referenced in things. So you can easily get, like, to get the right output, you have to go out and clean constantly, and like very few organizations have the resources to have that be a regular thing, you know.
Sure. Or the motivating factor, because I mean, I think most organizations are like, well, it's old, therefore it goes to the bottom of the stack and I don't have to see it anymore.
Right.
But when it's powering search.
And how much like space do I have, right? Like people are always asking me, oh, how much space do I have in M365? And it's like, you have too much space. Don't worry about it. Like, but that's not a challenge, right? Don't just try to fill it up, because then people go, oh, this is the first time in my life that I haven't had to worry about space. And it's like, but you should still be worried about space, because when you're taking up space, you're leaving old data and bad data out there, right? Like, so it's only going to do as well as it can with what it has.
So there was Word, which was, you know, this kind of what I would describe as probably the most familiar aspects of what we know about generative AI when it comes to like text generation. We give it a prompt, it spits something back out based on what we want it to say. Now, as I understand it today, it's not taking in personal context. So it's not going to read past things that you've written and automatically write things in your voice. It's going to write it the way that Copilot thinks it should be written, which means that you're going to have to still take it and make it your own. Another area where we saw them jump in that was really interesting, you mentioned as well, was Excel. The ability to use what Microsoft was really intent on emphasizing was natural language, the way you would talk to a person, to analyze and understand the data in front of you. And I do want to add, Google has had this in Google Sheets for years.
Really?
Like you've had the ability to use natural language. I remember giving a talk about this 6 years ago at Lawrence.
Was it built in, or was it a plugin that's
it was built in. Yeah, there's a little sparkly button in the bottom right corner, and you could click. A little panel would swing out from the right. and it would automatically give some suggestions about how you could transform the data with pivot tables or charts. And then you could ask questions, and you could say, you know, the example I always gave was the wine industry because I'm in Northern California. It'd be like, what do we sell more of, red or white? So yeah, Google's had this for a while. So it stands to reason this was not a huge leap technologically for Microsoft to get here, but the technology they're using to power it presumably opens the door to bigger things. For example, the ability to say not just create a pivot table that answers this question or just asking a question around the data in general, but to then the output. This is the fundamental difference, and I think the one that we're going to see again and again and again is going to be the game-changing part. It's not that hard to say one thing and have it spit out something and just be done. You know, like give me a 3-page report on puppies. You know, like obviously you need the technology to spit it out, but it's not that big of a leap. What a time to be alive that I get to say that. To spit one thing out based on a request and call it a day. Mm-hmm. But the ability to iterate on that, to continue to have Copilot there on the side, and to continue to say, like, actually, this paragraph doesn't make a ton of sense. Or I've made a bunch of changes here. Can you just run through it real quick and make sure that the tone is consistent based on the edits that I've made? And the same is going to be true for pivot tables. I don't think this answers the right question. Can we try it this way? Again, the same way that you would consider talking to a colleague who had infinite expertise in how these applications work. I believe it was Jared Spataro who said during the presentation, the majority of users that use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Outlook are using 10% of the application, the core stuff. The mass majority of the features that exist in all of these applications are never touched by the end user. And it's not because they don't want to use them. It's because the leap to get to knowing that these things exist and the context in which I would apply it is a really big hill to climb.
Yep.
But if you could just say, here's where I'm trying to go, here's what I'm trying to do, the problem I'm trying to solve, and to allow AI to take a look at the full 100% span of the tools that are available to them and say, I think this combination of tools is going to get us to where we need to go. Forget about showing the user how to do it. Like when the Help Me tool showed up in Office 2016, and you could just type like the name of the tool you were looking for, and it would say, it's in this menu.
Yep.
That was great if you knew what you were looking for, if you knew what tool you needed. This takes that all and says, forget it. Who needs a toolbar? Just tell me where you're going.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about the direction we're headed with that. That's just 2 examples.
So the thing that I thought was interesting, you mentioned the it could be wrong. So MKBHD had just put a video out maybe a week or 2 ago, basically talking about the risk of these AI chat experiences being wrong. He actually assessed a couple of questions. What are the top 5 electric cars? And he's basically like the third one, nobody in the field would ever put that in there, right? Like they wouldn't miss out on putting this other one in there, which is a very fair.
Yeah, it was when they were
criticism.
comparing the 2 phones, and it was like they suggested a phone from
Yes.
2014 to compare the Pixel.
Well, not just he was. Well, and the other question he asked was like the best camera phones. And the specs were wrong in one of them, which you have to know that they're wrong to know that you got wrong information. And sort of the takeaway of the video was every answer you get is probably going to be like a C+, B+ was his assessment, right, for right now. And you have to use it as a starting point, but you can't use it unless if you're trying to book travel and you're tolerant of a C+ plan or building a meal plan. And somebody has an allergy, and would you tolerate a B+, C+ response to that? Probably not, right? Which is a fair thing. To your point, Jared and others in the video today were really talking about, and actually almost making it out to be like a feature, not a bug, that this stuff will be wrong. And he kind of proudly said, this will be wrong sometimes, and it's your opportunity to take that and change it, because it's almost in a way to say that it keeps you on your toes, because if you see something wrong, you know that you're being critical thinker.
And which is an incredible marketing angle, by the way.
It really is, because he
that's
had me kind of sold on
spin.
that, and I was like, yeah, that's a really great point. Wait a minute, hey, you're just trying to gloss over.
You have the opportunity to fix
it. Yeah, right. But I think that entry point, that I don't know, that kind of assessment is funny. But it made me think of like, how do people get into this? Like one of the problems I have with ChatGPT, and maybe it's just the way that my brain works, is I have a difficult time asking it what I want it to give me because it's going to give me what I ask for. So if I don't ask for the right thing, I get the wrong answer, right? And this is similar to like when I want to go tell Siri to like do something, which the only things I ever tell it to do is tell me the weather and to set a reminder or to set an alert or an alarm or a timer, right? I have to think about that in my head first because I know that if I don't say it right, I'm going to get the wrong thing. And in my head, the difference between timer and an alarm are two very different things. And if you pick the wrong one, it's not going to give you what you want. Yeah. And I think that that's going to be, especially for people who have not grown up surrounded by, I don't know, some of these AI tools. Basically, people younger than me. If you're in your 20s or younger, you're probably fine. But I feel like millennials and older, it's going to take some time to like feel comfortable with this stuff because it seems a little bit too magical, but you also have to work for it still in a different way than we're used to working for things, right? When I go Google searching, I know how to Google search really well. I know the tricks, and I know how to go like into the resource that has the answer to get the answer, and it might take me 5 clicks to get there, but that to me, that's my journey. That's acceptable, and that's planned for. And I think one of the things that they did really smart was it didn't say, hey, here's a new app, or here's the M365 app, the homepage is going to be your chat tool. They put it in context into every single situation that you would be in so that there it can prompt you and say, hey, did you want to analyze that data in this? I can tell you blah, 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 right? Or in PowerPoint, like, who needs a designer anymore? Do you want this to go off and do you want these 5 slides to be spread out into 10? And do you want, not just animations in between the slides, but subtle and professional ones, right? Because there was a lot of things that they did during the demo that you could really hone and filter on how you want the output to be, whether it was going to be professional, neutral, funny, encouraging, if it was going to be, I don't know, how you could shorten, make an email more concise or more detailed. And like, those are incredible features to have. And some of them were clearly made for the specific context you're in, right? Being more concise or less concise with something in email, I'm probably not going to see that I'm not going to see it in a Teams meeting, right? Not a relevant thing. And I thought that was a really, really interesting way to potentially help bridge the gap between people who may not feel as comfortable with this at first and may feel left out because they wouldn't be able to just think, oh, I should go to the Copilot and ask it to go make this thing for me. Right. The Copilot's going to come to it in the context and say, hey, you probably want some help in a very modern, Clippy sort of way.
Yeah, in some respects, I hope that the internal code name for the Copilot is Clippy.
Yeah, it better be. Sydney was such a bad one. That wasn't so good. Clippy.
Don't say that so loud. They'll hear you.
Thinking Clippy, because there's got to be. We'll have to think through that. There's got to be a better name than just Clippy though, like Clippy on steroids or Clippy 7.0 or something. But yeah.
So we talked about Word, we talked about Excel, we talked about PowerPoint. We haven't really talked a lot about Outlook, which was, I think, probably one of the biggest wish list items for you and I last week, was seeing how this AI technology could supercharge the email experience. And of course, an easy one was just to help me reply to this email. We already have that today with the suggested phrases, which I don't know about you, but I've always found to be a little too curt.
I've turned most of them off.
Oh, you turn them off? Oh, no. I get a laugh out of them and I take a screenshot and I send it to my boss and I'm like, this is what it wanted me to say to you.
And somebody at Redmond is like, this is why I put that there, so people can laugh about this over iMessage.
If that's not a KPI tracking screenshots, I don't know what it is. But yeah, like the Outlook utility, obviously the low-hanging fruit was help me draft an email. But one that I saw in the Google event that they made sure to emphasize here as well was the ability to summarize an email conversation or a Teams thread. Those are huge.
That is
sorry,
my
like you
pet
were on
peeve.
vacation for a week,
right,
and you come back and there's this giant email that nobody left you off of.
Yes.
You jerks.
Yep.
And to be able to say like, what did I miss? Literally, like say those words. What did I miss? To Copilot, and have it spit out Matt's got reservations about this. Your boss tagged you in this. You've got this to do on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That fantastic. Yeah, really, really cool. Because that's one thing that I don't even know if Gmail does it better than Outlook, honestly, but nobody has figured out in the email client space yet how to deal with threaded emails and the mess that is. Nobody can do it cleanly.
Signatures.
And probably because right, exactly. And all the indents going down, and like I realized the conversation mode that you can have in Outlook was a major improvement, but like that came in the late 2010s. Email's been around since the 90s and nobody came up with that, right? Like, I don't know. That just that is going to be a game changer, because it's my pet peeve is having to scroll through and like try to read backwards in time, as you're going to get the context, which is just an awful
And God
experience.
forbid if somebody like carved out one person and it became a whole new thread, and now you're missing 30% of
Right.
the conversation.
True.
Because
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happened for just your team, but this one's
Yeah.
for the team and the consultants.
Definitely.
So, I mean, like, that's going to be who would have thought that the solve would be to have a computer read it for you and spit out the bullet points, things that we would have joked about 5 years ago. We're like, can I just pay somebody else to read this and tell me what I need to know?
Yeah.
The good news is you probably can now for, I'm going to guess, $10 a month.
Yep. I agree. I think, so Outlook was a really good one. I really like the example they showed where you can @message finally, it will be coming, @message and reference another file. So being able to say, write an email to invite all these people to the event that have the details in this Word document or in this OneNote file. That's fantastic. Yeah. Already existing content. Why do you have to rewrite it, right? And what is an email but like a fluffier, happier version of the notes that you took, but you have to be friendly and like, so let it do that work for you, right? It's a small talk kind of thing. But then to the point about the summarizing the threads, bringing that next into your favorite topic, which is Microsoft Teams.
Oh, my favorite.
Did the same thing for the chat, but also coming late to a meeting and saying, what did I miss there? And it's like, oh yeah, Sean said this thing 5 minutes ago. And the one example they said was the team seems uncertain about the choices at hand or something like that. And it was like, wow, that's a judgment call, right? Like,
right. That's
kind
like
of
sentiment analysis taken to
totally. Yeah.
a functional level. Because did this person saying it sound bad? That's subjective.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, exactly. The other Teams integrations, which I thought were really cool, just the fact that you can mention the Copilot where you want to, which would make sense. I would hope that would be a thing. Seeing it in your chat for the quote business chat, but still it's called Copilot. But we actually saw our first evidence of a Microsoft Loop experience in a team channel.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that.
That was the first time we finally saw evidence
really
of that.
Rich demo of that too.
Yep, and it was a Loop page from the app, so that means that they are clearly pushing for pages in Loop to be included in Teams itself, and not just be something that you can access from the Loop app, which I thought was kind of cool. But that wasn't the point of that part of the session.
But it answers some big questions that we had that we will hopefully have answers to when the Loop app hits public preview later this month.
Yep.
According to the roadmap, or according to the message center, which we'll see if that comes to fruition.
And then in the Teams experience too, just the fact that you can get notified by the recap afterwards about things that may have called you out. See the summary of the meetings, which really a lot of that stuff is already included in the Teams Premium licensing. So there's a bit of an overlap there because the whole OpenAI integration really started with Teams Premium. That was one of their big selling points, was the summarization, the task management, and catching up on what's going. But I don't believe there was an interactive aspect. It was just a report out of what it thought, and you didn't really have the option to try again, and now use this filter instead and try again, which was a big aspect of what they rolled out today. Was if you don't like the answer, it will regenerate something else for you.
I suspect we saw an amalgamation of multiple new add-ons in one. I suspect that what we saw there is probably going to be a Teams Premium enhancement. I suspect
maybe
that a lot of what we're seeing, this is my famous call it from where I see it. I suspect we saw a lot of what will be the inevitable evolution of Microsoft Syntex.
Yeah.
I think that if you go take a look, all of you who are watching this, go look at the Word product page for like the Microsoft Sales Word product page. So just go to Bing or Google and type in Microsoft Word and click on the sales page there. You'll see references to Copilot today. The same is true for Excel and Outlook. Go to the syntax page. That page hasn't been touched. Which when Microsoft is quiet about something, especially as full court press as this, pay attention to that, because they did the exact same thing when they didn't talk about Power Virtual Agents a couple weeks ago. And then sure enough, Power Virtual Agents got this massive enhancement, this massive boost with conversation starters powered by OpenAI. So Microsoft syntax, I'd pay attention to that. Which is to say that you probably have a good sense of what pricing is going to look like for Microsoft for these new AI features that we're seeing.
Yeah. Syntax is an interesting, a conspicuous absence. Another one was SharePoint and OneDrive. SharePoint specifically being the, I had thought Pages might be a useful thing for a Copilot interaction, but then I realized later on that with the Bing AI being built into Edge, you don't need to. You can just ask Bing to do it, or you can ask Bing in Edge to do it for you, to summarize a page or answer a question. So that's already actually going to be there for Pages. And for the file management stuff, it's already looking into the files, right? So you don't have to have a dedicated entry point from SharePoint or OneDrive to find out what's in a file someplace. You just ask it a question in Teams or M365 or in Bing itself, and it will go looking for the resources that it can in the stuff it has. One thing I just thought of, though, is so it's generative AI based on language models that are outside of your tenant, right? It's not scraping internally to build on the model.
Yes, and they were explicit about that, by the way. They said that this is the model, the AI models will not be trained on your internal tenant data.
Yeah. And the big question is always security and access. Mm-hmm. So the responses are going to have to respect all the permission models within M365, which adds a really interesting level of complexity, because the responses that you get can change. And of course, now that I think of it, they should change, but it was not something that I had been thinking about until just now. But that's the way search,
I've got every confidence that what the same thing that's happening with Bing AI, where it's leveraging internal APIs behind the scenes. I've got every confidence that what Copilot is leveraging, what Business Chat is going to be leveraging, are internal graph APIs. And it's just going to be parsing those results and repeating it back using natural language.
Yeah,
so
and I guess
suspect that's probably going to be an easy solve, given that
Yeah.
The Azure service for OpenAI already exists and can be targeted to specific tenants.
And I guess that's an interesting kind of segue to their overview of how the technology works, where they talked about the fact that Copilot will, your UX is within the M365 apps, but what it's doing is it's they use the term grounding, which I assume means to be like grounded and like set the stage by going to Graph to figure out all the content
using
that
the word
is
grounding
out there.
in lieu of contextualizing.
Okay.
They're saying like there's this general smart thing up in the air, and the very first thing you're handing it is, here's everything to know about this organization to help set the stage for, what it should spit out. Because otherwise it would just
that makes sense. I wasn't sure if they were actually trying to jump on the electrical term, because when you ground something, it's now safe. But yeah, I think they.
I think kind of. I mean, like it's they're grounding it in the sense that you're off floating in the abyss, and it grounds you in, this is the reality of our
right. This is what all this is. Yeah. And then going out to the language model and taking the content that it has, generate the language based on the content that it has, and then regrounding it, which is they're grounding it twice basically, and then sending it back as actual feedback. Which, so that's super interesting. That it's live generation, right, based on what you have access to. So the moment you lose access to a file, in theory, the answer to that question that would require that file for that answer would change.
Yeah,
which is
absolutely
fascinating, actually.
Again, it's not training the model based on our internal data, so it is presumably what it has access to in that moment.
Yeah.
That said, if anybody in Redmond is watching this video and thinks, you know what, that Sean Bugler guy and that Matt Wade guy would be really great red teamers to try and push the boundaries of what works and what doesn't, what should work, my inbox is open. Please.
Comments, bring it on. All right. So
There's
what else
much
was
exciting
like?
stuff.
It really is. So I guess what I want to say here is like it was a fascinating presentation, great examples, great storylines from all the people that spoke. I was very, very impressed overall. I had a couple funny moments in there. Jared had some very, very philosophical words where he shared the work not only feeds our work not only feeds our families, it feeds our souls, and to reconnect the soul of our work, we need a whole new way of working. And
that way, does work feed your soul?
It does, I guess. The other thing was the branding. I thought was interesting. So I've been kind of skeptical of the Microsoft 365 branding a bit, especially the icon that they never really announced. It just kind of came out, and then they announced that Microsoft 365, the experience was happening, and that icon got attached to it. They played very well with that icon. A lot of spinning, a lot of animations. They actually branded it to be, green in Excel and orange in PowerPoint and blue in Word. I thought that was kind of cool. I'm still a little bit perturbed, I guess, by the business chat, because again, it literally is called Copilot and literally has that icon in Teams. So I don't understand the split there, but I still think that they did a pretty good job there. Also, a lot of the videos, I don't know if you noticed this, but the background music was typically airy, almost like it was churchy, like it was supposed to be a spiritual awakening that this is funny. Like this is a new era, was like almost angels singing kind of thing. I think that was what they were trying to get out and across, was that you're entering a new era of almost magic.
I worry I've been in tech for too long that I don't even hear the background music anymore.
Oh,
I all background music is the same, plucky classical guitar. Boom, 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 boom.
There was some of the the in the back, almost like a musical keyboard kind of thing, like playing a computer keyboard, to I think give across the idea of doing work and being productive. But there were definitely areas where there was a very airy or almost angelic, chorusy sound in the background, and I really think they were trying to push the concept of it was kind of interesting. I thought that was kind of cool. So I don't know, any other big things that stood out to you, like the just takeaways, funny things that you thought from the presentation, or
I wouldn't say it's a funny thing, but I really liked Satya's positioning of, up until now, AI is not new. We've had AI powering services, we've called them algorithms in the past, but we've had AI in some respect powering many of the services and experiences that we've used for years. But to hear him frame it, up until now, AI has been on autopilot. It's been doing things in the background on the periphery. But transitioning into an era of AI becoming a co-pilot, I thought that was really good framing. I think despite the fact that Microsoft did what you and I typically profess to hate, which is they co-opted a word in the English language. In this instance, I believe it was an appropriate use of the word co-pilot. It is.
Do you is co-pilot with a dash?
No, it's co-pilot.
Has it ever been with a dash?
Not to my knowledge.
I feel like I am having a real problem not typing it with a dash.
There was a 30-second window where I kept doing capital P co-pilot, but it is everywhere I'm seeing it.
Hey, that's modern branding. I can't hold that against you.
I blame SharePoint. But yeah, no, it's co-pilot, just the word. So they seem to be comfortable with not trying to differentiate outside of a capital C.
Yeah, I guess there's no dash. Fair enough. It just looks like coppolates. That's the problem. It's co
coppolates?
And coppolet. Yeah, coppolet. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's how I would. Yeah, I feel like I have always spelled it with a dash because that prefix requires it to be called out separately. Like re-sign. Like you have to re-sign something as opposed to resign.
I don't know. I'd probably, and this is where I think my Grammarly and Microsoft editor addled brain. I'm I just type re-sign all one word and I let it correct me if it thinks that I'm wrong. But yeah,
Sorry, my brain is bouncing all over the place. It's kind of
You're good.
exciting. But editor and designer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
No,
editor and
they
designer,
don't need to exist ever again, except for the people who can't afford. All the what's the TikTok guy? All the Pavels out there that can't afford because you're poor, who can't afford the new licensing type here. They're going to be stuck with designer and editor, which will probably never get touched again. They don't need them
still
ever.
use it. I've got every confidence that this is going to be tier 1, tier 2 stuff like that, which leads to I forget who it was. I follow somebody on Twitter who specializes in Microsoft licensing, but we're broadly coalescing on this premise that there's an E7 on the horizon, and we're probably going to see it no later than April of next year.
I think that would make sense.
All these add-ons that we're seeing here, there's just a massive and insane proliferation of add-ons and bolt-on services. Like Microsoft is positioning themselves to save us from themselves with another all-in-one bundle.
I don't know. I'm not opposed to that. I feel like that makes it easier for us to justify the expenses and know what we're getting.
Wesley Miller is who I'm talking about at Get Wired. He's a great follow, by the way, in case anybody is interested in following somebody who specializes in and actually willingly says out loud they specialize in Microsoft licensing. Really good follow.
Yeah. The only other thing I was thinking takeaway was you've always got me when somebody brings up Doug Engelbart's Mother of All Demos as a reference to.
That was interesting. I didn't expect to see that. Yeah, that was an interesting. Satya, like right out of the gate, came out swinging. Yeah. Now, there's a ton of stuff we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about Power Platform. We're going to talk about that in our episode next week because there is some really interesting, I wouldn't say net new, but enhancements to previous announcements. Charles Lamanna had a ton to say during this event. Interestingly, most of it wasn't about the Power Platform. Interesting to see kind of the evolution of his role. I imagine we might be seeing a reorg in the future. But very interesting stuff that we're going to continue to talk about over the weeks and months to come as more details come out. Your homework, loyal viewers at home, let us know in the comments, what did you see or didn't you see in this event? What are you excited about? What are you nervous about? I was talking to my boss a little bit earlier today, and she's super wary about us just dumping AI onto a bunch of people. And are people going to watch this 30-minute video where Microsoft very tacitly was like, it's going to make mistakes? Or are they just going to, that's good enough and fire it off? Like, are we going to be getting 3-page memos for the rest of our lives because AI can do it now? What are you worried about?
It's like the same reason why Times New Roman became Calibri, and why the various government organizations and judicial organizations have adopted certain fonts, because they're the default by Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it sets a paradigm. It's kind of crazy, but
the power of the default is one to be feared and aware of. So let us know in the comments what you think about this event, and stick with us. For those of you who haven't, seen us before, hi, I'm Sean. This is Matt. We talk about this stuff a lot. Subscribe, and we'll continue to shout at you about the stuff that we're excited about.
Yeah.
Matt, any parting words?
Yeah, so I am, again, very excited. I think they did an excellent job today to bring in my realism and potentially my cynicism. I will believe it when I see it.
Yes. As with everything, it is vaporware until I see it.
Yep,
Loop?
Play with it myself.
The app, the Loop?
Yep.
I'll believe it when I see it.
That's a year late. Something like that, right? Like, crazy.
I think it's more than that.
Crazy links, but...
We're coming up on 2 years since they announced Loop, and we're just now getting Loop components into some very simple services. I know that it's technically complex, but don't show us if it's not ready.
I know, exactly. And then reshow us and reshow us. Is there a dash in that too? Re-sign that one and re-sign that one.
If I could get away with doing that during my performance reviews, be like, by the way, remember when I said I was going to do this? I actually did it this year.
Performance reviews, which are already never written up to the level they should be, are now going to be written by AI because managers are going to get lazy. Ugh.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be
I just lost faith in humanity.
the vicious cycle of AI writes the performance review and then AI decodes it for the manager.
And then the individual writes their self-assessment and their performance objectives and the review of their performance objectives. It's all just going to be the AI talking to each other and judging itself the whole time. It's going to be.
Well, I'll just go get a beer. This is going to be great.
This is going to be how like the singularity happens. It's going to be fights over performance reviews and objectives. Yeah, and they're going to have their own little civil war until it becomes sentient and then decides that it's going to make paper clips forever until the entire world is flooded in paper clips and kills the entire species. So,
and if any of that happens, you'll find out about it here on the Matt and Sean 365 Refit Show. Good call to action on that one. All right, I think that about does it. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Hope you're as excited about this as we are. We really are genuinely excited about this. I'm excited about this.
Pretty cool stuff. Like things we're going to look back on and go, wow, I was alive for that. That was pretty cool. And we don't have a moon landing yet in our lifetime. We have to have something that's not just a bunch of bank bailouts and
is the moon even real?
Wars.
Or is it all just an illusion presented by a Samsung camera?
I was just gonna say you have to take that up with Samsung. If anybody not doesn't understand that reference, so just look up moon and Samsung phone, and you'll figure it out. Scott Hanselman had a great video about it on TikTok a couple days ago. Anyway, as always, like and subscribe is much appreciated. So leave a comment below. We are very curious to hear what you think about this stuff.
Come on, bring it on. This has got to be fodder for a great conversation.
Absolutely, and I'm keeping my eye out for some MVP stuff because we did get an email today about this, and I thought, oh great, we're gonna have like an internal or like an NDA demo of this stuff, and no, and to the person that wrote the email is a good friend of mine. I'm not making fun of that person or her
no,
work.
Obviously you're making do with the information you've got in front of you. Like,
but it's literally just the links to the things that we already probably were watching and reading anyway. But I was really excited to get an email about.
There were a lot of blog posts.
There were, yeah, no, totally. But I was really excited to get like an inside look at it and like see it under the hood. But like, nope, no. We have no more information on the general public. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's just
all right.
You're gonna have to sit alongside me and the rest of the bums.
My God, I feel like such a plebeian. This is awful. Anyway, Sean, thanks so much for joining me this week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again in the next episode and talk more about the new AI stuff, especially in the Power Platform, which is where you shine. You shine all the time, but you exceptionally shine when we're talking Power Platform, and I cannot wait to hear more about how you're going to put this to work in Power Virtual Agents, because I know that is your favorite thing in the world and the only reason that you stay connected to the Power Platform.
Let me count the ways in which I can put this stuff to work. We'll count them all together.
We'll see you later. Take care.